It is Sunday, October 24th. I'm on my way to the Unitarian Church of Montreal to protest against a variety of Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuses, and hypocrisy, including Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse that includes such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape, and the repeated and quite continuous attempts by the Unitarian Church of Montreal and the Unitarian Universalist Association to cover up and deny clergy sex abuse in general, clergy sexual abuse, and more particularly child sex abuse, which they've outright denied on several occasions now. So I don't know what these balloons are. There's a bunch of balloons out front. I presume they're to welcome members back, after the church has been essentially closed for quite some time due to the COVID-19 situation, but I really don't know for sure. So we're going to continue on our way, but I noticed these balloons from a block and a half away and decided to comment on it and start filming. So we'll just continue towards the church, keep the camera running in body cam mode. See a cyclist coming this way. I didn't see anyone approaching the Unitarian Church of Montreal yet. I see some appear to be cones on the ground. Oh, they're holding the balloons. I get it. So who knows? Maybe they're welcoming me back. Somehow I doubt it, but anyhow, let's see. So a bunch of balloons. Take a closer look here. Let's have another look at these balloons. So yeah, there they are in all their glory. So again, I have no idea with certainty what these are about, but they probably have something to do with welcoming people back to the Unitarian Church of Montreal after they've been away. Although I notice there's not any on the other side of the entrance, so I suppose it's within possibility that they have nothing to do with the Unitarian Church of Montreal. But in any case, we shall set up our picket signs, protest signs, and maybe do a little monologue. But first we'll put up the signs so they can be seen. I'll put out my unsafe sect picket sign so it can be seen from a good distance. Let's see here. Ta-da. Right, okay. So there. You liars bear false witness against me, which they absolutely do. This is all about Unitarian Universalists telling lies about me. I mean, it's not all about that, but it certainly began as a result of Reverend Ray Drennan and Frank Green and other leading members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal essentially spreading insulting and defamatory words about me. And when I complained about that, instead of ensuring that the words were retracted and apologized for, of course the Unitarian Church of Montreal and the Unitarian Universalist Association backed Reverend Ray Drennan to the hilt and threatened me with expulsion from the church if I didn't shut up. Of course I didn't shut up, and so eventually I was suspended for 6 months because I deposited a letter of grievance in the mailboxes of board members, sort of an updated letter of a grievance. And I was actually within, even within the threats of being expelled, that was actually within the threats, They told me I couldn't distribute letters to congregants, after they couldn't do it during, well, I never did it during church services, but after church services, I did distribute some letters to congregants, and they prohibited me from doing that. But it was actually a quite important letter of grievance because it actually informed the board that after years of refusing to apologize, that Reverend Ray Drennan had delivered a non-apology that effectively repeated the insults, stood by them essentially and didn't retract them, didn't recognize any wrongdoing, etc. And so I essentially let the board know, well, this has happened, this is a new development, but it's not good enough, and it needs to be a proper apology, and it has to be delivered publicly, because this was just a letter I'd been sent. They kicked me out for 6 months. So I took the pill of a 6-month suspension, and then I one of these things, I think about the balloons. And then I came back and made it clear that, well, we still have the same old problem. Nothing's being resolved by my 6-month suspension, for putting a letter in the mailbox of the board members that, had they responsibly acted upon the content of it, would have brought the conflict to an end. So this was, I think sometime in 19...
Is that a flea market?
I have no idea what the balloons are for.
Oh.
Yeah. So, you guys asking if it's a flea market. And, people do put out balloons outside, church bazaars and stuff like that to attract people. So, anyway, actually the balloons might even draw attention to my protest, especially from people coming from the east this way. The balloons are waving around the wind. My picket signs are made to be seen from a good distance away. They have large lettering that can be read from 100 feet away or more. But the balloons will sort maybe they're trying to obscure. Maybe these are barrage balloons and they're trying to hide what my picket signs say. Trying to obscure it. This is funny. And you know what? That's not out of the question. I mean, I'm joking, but I'm only half joking. Because it's entirely possible that some members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal thought of that. They thought, if we put up balloons, it'll distract people from the protest, and it'll even, obscure the picket signs from being read from a distance at least. It's entirely possible, knowing sort of the ridiculous things that Montreal Unitarians have done in the past to try to conceal my protest or suppress my protest. That brings us, we're going to jump over a few things. That brings us to what the Unitarian Church of Montreal called positive picketers, or something like that. Definite positive was there. I'm pretty sure they use the word picketers or protesters, and then so they came up with this idea in the early 2000s to have a counter protest. So what they did is, a certain number of members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal would come out on Sunday mornings when I was protesting, and they'd have their own picket signs, and the picket signs said, positive stuff about the Unitarian Church. They had Unitarian Universalist principles written on them, Unitarian Universalist ideals written on them. The only problem is the reason I'm protesting is because Montreal Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists more generally have made a total mockery of Unitarian Universalist principles and ideals from the very beginning of this conflict, which began in 1995, 1996. I didn't start protesting until May 1998, so it was more than 2 years where I tried to settle everything internally without going public, and it just didn't work. As I said, I was expelled for 6 months for putting a letter in a mailbox. And it's funny because today's protest, I think they actually might I think they actually might be trying to obscure my picket signs with these balloons. So I'll just walk backwards. So I think they might be trying to hide my picket signs with the balloons. They're barrage balloons. Hilarious. Yeah, you know what? It's entirely possible. They're so foolish in some of the things that they do. Again, I'm not saying that that's exactly, that's just my interpretation of a possibility, but it is a real possibility that they actually thought they could obscure my protest with these balloons, hide the picket signs from being seen, because from the west, we're looking towards the west, my signs are designed to be seen from a good distance away. They can be seen 2-3 blocks away and read from 2 or 3 blocks away. In fact, I think I might change the position of one of my signs so it's more visible, because it's partly hidden by the bushes. So yeah, we'll change the position of this picket sign so it's more viewable from a distance. Looks like David Roll coming out of the church. And he's getting the hose, checking the hose. It's okay, David, I didn't bring any chalk today, I forgot. But I'll probably bring some for future protests. So that's David Rollert, the husband of Reverend Diane Rollert, and he was checking the garden hose. And in the past, he and other Montreal Unitarians have hosed down my chalk slogans, because I have used chalk slogans on the sidewalk as part of my protest. And it's funny because when I resumed my protest on September 19th, just over a month ago now, it didn't even occur to me to bring chalk. I'd sort of forgotten about that. So on my way today, after walking a few blocks, I did remember the chalk, and it would be a perfect day for using chalk, but I had forgotten it. It simply hadn't occurred to me. It was only while I was on my way that I reminded, maybe should have brought chalk today. And in hindsight, it wouldn't have been a bad idea to have some chalk. So now we've got bubbles coming out. So maybe that's what David was doing. Maybe it was all about bubbles, making bubbles. But the fact of the matter is that the church has, in fact, used the garden hose to wash away my slogans and protests, some of which specifically protest against child abuse and the cover-up and denial of child abuse by the Unitarian Universalist Church. So the way I see it is, if I write a chalk slogan specifically protesting against the sexual abuse of children by Unitarian Universalist ministers and Unitarian Universalist Sunday school teachers, etc. And in addition to that, the fact that Unitarian Universalists, including Montreal Unitarians, cover up and deny sexual abuse of children by the Unitarian, in the Unitarian Universalist religious community, by Unitarian Universalists. You come along with a hose and you erase that, well, you're a direct participant in the cover-up and denial, as far as I'm concerned. If you cover up the cover-up, you're covering up what's the cover-up's trying to hide. So you're part of the problem in a big way. So these bubbles are clear. Oh, I don't know. It just occurred to me now. Are they really trying to use bubbles against me? Are they trying to annoy me with bubbles? Is this Unitarian Universalist warfare? It's not impossible. They've done some incredibly foolish things before, so it's entirely possible that these bubbles, I'm sure, the more likely they're intended to be celebratory. They're, reopening after being closed for well over a year in terms of COVID-19. They closed in March 2020, and they just reopened to congregants on last Sunday. So this is the second Sunday where they've been open to congregants. But anyhow, we're having fun with this. It's entirely possible that these are celebratory bubbles and celebratory balloons, and also intended to keep my protest hidden as much as possible. Perhaps annoy me with bubbles, but I kind of like bubbles. I love bursting bubbles. And speaking of bursting bubbles, I've burst quite a few Unitarian Universalist bubbles, including the cease and desist demand letters that the Unitarian Universalist Association's Canadian attorney, Maitre Marc-André Coulombe, had me served with in June of 2012, in which he, amongst other ridiculous accusations, accused me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel for blogging about such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by Unitarian and Universalist ministers. The exact words of his cease and desist demand letter were your unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia or rape are defamatory, and he went on to say that they're so defamatory that they constitute blasphemous libel. So this woman is looking at the bubbles, looking at the balloons, and reading my picket signs. I don't know if she's come to attend the church today, but she's definitely reading the signs. So, do you want to come through? Like, I'm not blocking you. Do you want to keep going, or? Vous voulez passer?
Did you put these balloons here?
No, the church did. I think they're welcoming me back.
Strange idea.
Well, as you probably know, a lot of churches have been closed because of the COVID-19 situation. And this is the second Sunday that they're open to congregants to come to this.
But why do you have this?
Because I'm